So December 17th, 1620. December 17th, 1620. You're going to have Dorothy Bradford. Dorothy Bradford is going to fall off the Mayflower and she's going to freeze to death. Dorothy Bradford is the wife of William Bradford. William Bradford's the governor after, Carver starves to death. But William Bradford, it's on Plimouth Plantation. That's by William Bradford. The War of 1812, they burnt the building and we almost lost all this history. So it's kind of a terrible history because half the damn Pilgrims are going to starve to death. This is the first year. This is landing on Plymouth Rock. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. Well, Plymouth Rock actually landed on the English, right? I mean, the Plymouth Rock kind of knocked everybody out. 102 people were going to be on the Mayflower. The Mayflower Compact is like the first constitution ever. But the Mayflower comes over here, and that's English too. It's not the Americans. But we have English roots, British roots. So I actually heard of the rumor that she had committed suicide. And half of them are going to die. That's remarkable. So it's a tough fucking winter. It's a tough goddamn winter. So you have this historical fiction. So we got bits and pieces of the facts. You have William Bradford, and then you have Alice Carpenter, and then you have Dorothy. Dorothy May. And Dorothy May loved William Bradford. Dorothy May loved William Bradford. And she wanted William Bradford to love her too. But William Bradford loved Alice, and Alice agreed to marry Edward Southworth. William still loves Alice, and he just wants to get to America to get away from his grief, and he takes along 16-year-old Dorothy May. And they marry, and then several years pass, and then Dorothy bears a son. And then they set for the New World. They heard that Alice was recently widowed, and William immediately informs Dorothy that he plans to sail on the Mayflower and she should stay behind with their young son. Shocked at this sudden decision, Dorothy is determined to accompany her husband, but also learns that Alice has been widowed. Believing William wants to leave because he is still in love with Alice, Dorothy began to die, but accompanies William on the Mayflower, leaving her family and young son behind. Her depression deepens on board the ship, as she has nightmares about her son's death, and her fears about William are only intensified as he whispers Alice's name in his sleep. Oh my God. Even though this is historical fiction, I think that Jane Austen kind of fills in the gaps. Dorothy begins to die because he says he wants to get away, and you just want to leave her with the kid and then kind of go to America, but she's like, oh my goodness, he still loves Alice. He's going to go to the New World, get Alice to come there, and then just leave us here. He don't actually love me, and she knows that. She knows that she was the second fiddle, the second choice. His crush, the love of his life, was Alice, and he's settled for Dorothy, and she knows that he isn't crazy about her. So then they see that Dorothy Bradford falls overboard and drowns, and then we read of her anguish. And then William, 2 years later, writes to Alice, including the diary fragments, proposing she emigrate to the New World with her sons. Her letter to her and her response to him are both included in the story. Alice soon arrives in Plymouth on the Anne, and 2 weeks later is married to William. The facts: while the Mayflower was anchored in Plymouth Harbor in December of 1620, several of the men, including William Bradford, went on an exploratory mission on land to find a good place to settle. While they were gone, Dorothy Bradford went missing several decades later, and on Plimouth Plantation, William Bradford's story of the Plymouth colony, William wrote that his wife died soon after their arrival. Much later, in 1702, Cotton Mather recorded in his Magnalia Christi Americana that at their first landing, William Bradford's dearest consort, accidentally falling overboard, was drowned in the harbor. So there is no intention. It wasn't a suicide. It wasn't, oh my God, what has happened? But maybe it was. Maybe there's a latent, sadness that was there, and oops, I accidentally fell, off the ship. And that's not that's a hell of a fucking accident. And couldn't she swim? Couldn't she grab a rope? And how far off the harbor were they? And what a terrible way to die. So those are the facts. And then later on, he does write to Alice, Southward. She was widowed with 2 children. She immigrates to Plymouth on the Anne, 1623, and then she marries William Bradford 2 weeks later. And then William and Alice have 3 children, William, Mercy, and Joseph. So the facts don't fill in the emotional, what they were going through and what they were thinking. But Jane Austen kind of filled in the details, kind of filled in the potholes. I think she did a good job because I think she kind of made the story more complete. Okay, here's the historical fact. Here's the historical fact. But you don't have the human element. You don't have the, the emotions that was behind it. There's love and there's jealousy and then there's insecurity. There's ambition and there's so many things that's going on. So that's December 17th, 1620. December 17th, 1620 and 102. They started out with 102. Half of them are going to starve to death. That means they probably cannibalized them, right? They're starving, they're hungry. And you have, those bodies over there. They're probably thinking, like the Donner family. The Donner family was sitting there saying they're probably going to die anyway. So the child who was writing the diary was saying that her uncle was giving her meat for the last 5 days, who was actually people. Soylent Green. She didn't know about it at all, but then she kind of shrugged it off saying, well, we're all goners anyway, so what does it matter? Shit was tough. Shit was tough on the eastern seaboard in America. Was that Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island? White writes that Dorothy's face as she lies in the sleep of death has on it a brighter smile than I ever saw there before. Gone the look of homesickness and wistful yearning for my boy because she has at last reached home. Woo! Austen's version of the story is historical fiction. Let's see here. The themes of despondency, despair, unrequited love, and death by suicide are all evocative of the Gothic thrillers. The trope of the missing manuscript and the secret letters that reveal the truth. After all, Faith White's letter book was also supposedly a journal that had been recovered. All right. Courtship of Miles Standish. R.I.P. to Dorothy Bradford.